guys. So amazing to see so many young men and women in a room in one place with hungry minds. I love it, I love it, I love it. So, I was a very, very bad speaker in that I provided almost no information to these guys about what I do, who I am, and they did a really good job of introducing them. I'm gonna take 2 seconds just give you a little bit of background maybe about where I come from, because I had a lot of questions before the session about what I do and how I got here and all that fun stuff. So we'll talk a little bit about that. It's probably not what you think. I had a very different career path up until this point, so it's kind of interesting to talk about. And then we'll talk a little bit about Hololens, right? How many people here have tried a Hololens before? Very small number, right? And that's one, because they're $4,500. That's the first problem. But two, because up until recently, education hasn't really been a focal point for this product. Not that we didn't want to do it, but just the fact that it's cost prohibitive and that it's a developing technology. So a lot of times what will happen is teachers and administrators will look at a device like this and say, it looks really cool, but what am I going to do with it? Right? So part of the conversation we're going to have in the next 30 minutes is, what are we doing with it today and what are the plans for what we're going to do with it in the future? I'll probably date myself. Has anybody read a book called Ready Player One? Excellent. So I was at the movies yesterday. I'm a movie buff, so every time I come to town, I hit a movie theater. I'm a geek that way. And I saw a preview for the movie coming for Ready Player One, which is really, really awesome. To those of you that have seen the movie that understand the reference, I read the book before I got a HoloLens. And the second I saw a HoloLens, I thought of Ready Player One. The reason why I thought of that is because the main character, the young guy in the movie, jacks in to go to school. And I can see a time in the not too distant future where this is how we go to school. This is how I do my work. So a lot of people earlier came up and were asking me questions what I do, and I said, well, this is what I travel with. I don't travel with a laptop. I have a cell phone, but I don't really use it for anything other than taking calls or sending texts. But this is how I do my day-to-day work, is on a HoloLens. So we'll talk a little bit about how I do that. So first, about me. Born and raised in a small town. Who here is from Laced, Quebec? Can I get it? No? No, nobody. Okay, so I grew up in a small town, about 600 people, water from a well, you know, that kind of stuff, country boy. And my first job was at McDonald's, 14 years old. Today that job doesn't exist anymore. It's been replaced by a kiosk, right? And that's part of the point of having these conversations about technology. A lot of kids today, I got 3 kids, really blessed to have 3 kids, great wife, 3 wonderful kids. I'm worried. I'm not worried because they're not intelligent. I'm not worried because they're not eager. I'm not worried because they don't have access to tech. They got all the tech they want. I'm worried because the way we're educating today in a lot of cases drives out to a conclusion that's already gone. That's why we need groups like this. That's why we need collectives like this. Because 50, 60% of the jobs today that you're in school for may vaporize, may disappear. Think of things like transportation, things like retail sales. Look at Best Buy. A lot of people go to Best Buy to see what they want to buy so they can order it on Amazon. I'm guilty of that all the time. I swear to God, I order stuff every second day. I see something cool on Amazon and I order it. Like, I know the delivery guy on a first name basis, right? So I started at McDonald's, and like I said, that job, gone. After that, I did retail sales. I pumped some gas for a while. That'll be gone. When you think of self-driving cars and Uber, even Uber drivers, pretty soon they'll be gone because the car will just drive itself. So the point is, we need to get ahead of the curve on technology like this. Because if we don't adapt, we get run over. And that's an important thing, and that's something that parents need to understand. That's something that teachers and administrators need to understand, and academics, older academics. I don't want to date myself, but I feel like an old guy. I saw in the selfie challenge, take a picture of an old guy. I'm like, oh no. There we go. I can have a lineup around the corner of people trying to take a picture of me because I'm an old guy. Plus, you would have got the trifecta from another city and a speaker. So I was worth 3 points right there. It's pretty good for those of you that got me. But even myself, like, I have to adapt to constant technology. I have to adapt to, I used to go to meetings with customers in a suit, 3-piece suit and a jacket. Now I'm like jeans. I still got a collar on because I'm presenting, but normally it'd be just a regular shirt because that's the way the world is. The world isn't in education 3-piece suits and stuff like that, because then I can't relate to you, because I come in and you think I'm like a principal or I'm a director of something. I'm just like me, I'm just like you. I'm just passionate for technology, right? So along the way, I took a really strange career path. I actually wanted to be a police officer. So when I went in Quebec, you have CEGEP before university. It's kind of a community college before university. A 3-year program, I went into police. I was accepted in computer science and police academy, and I chose police. And by the time I'd done my 3-year program, I came to the realization that my vision of what a police officer wasn't what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a detective. I wanted to be out there solving crimes. I didn't want to be parked in a U-turn on the 401 giving tickets for people who were speeding. I didn't want to be directing traffic in a construction zone. I wanted to skip all that stuff. And that's totally normal. For all of you, there's going to be points in your life where there's topics where you really just want to skip over that stuff. And we had really great conversations last night, all the speakers, when we were out having dinner, about this kind of stuff, about education. It's not being afraid to be passionate and to go for what you want. I think one of the biggest challenges, in personal opinion, and biggest challenges in education today are that we're told what to learn. Maybe you're really good at programming, but no one ever asks if you're good at programming. Like, I think part of the education process, I get that we need to know math. I need that we get to know science and biology and all that fun stuff, and it's important. Don't get me wrong. You don't want to be poorly educated. But there should be a portion of our education that's driven towards your passion. If you're an artist, if you're a programmer, you're a graphics designer, you like gaming, there should be a piece of that pie for what you do best, and the system should be able to help you develop what you do best. Which is one of the reasons why I went into education. So, long story short, police work didn't work for me. I didn't want to be a police officer, so I did undercover work. So I was an infiltration specialist. So I spent 6 years undercover, going into places. I had a list of, okay, check this guy, what's this guy doing, check her out, I think there's something going on there. So I spent 6 years doing undercover work. One day, 6 years later in that career, having a great time. I mean, I was young, I had my own place, money was good, it was a fun job. I happened to meet a client at the IBM building in Montreal. And I got in the elevator and I bumped into an old friend from school and he said, hey, what are you doing? I said, oh, yeah, undercover work. He said, you love PCs, why don't you come work for IBM? At the time, IBM was like, for me, the pinnacle. Like my idea of technology, there was no Facebook, there was no Google. I started when laptops weighed 7 or 8 pounds. You bought a ThinkPad 770, that thing was $7,000, right? That's when I started, luggables, the end of the luggables, right? And for me, that was like the pinnacle. So I said, sure. So I embarked on this completely different journey from law enforcement and undercover work to technology. My mom forced my dad to buy me my first computer. It was an XT, a 286 XT, like a DX266. Cost him about $2,800. So he called my mom on his big brick cell phone with an antenna this long. He's like, are you crazy? This is almost $3,000. And she just shut up buying my computer, because that's the future, right? So one, the first note is, don't let pricing fool you. Don't let cost fool you. Now, I'm a sales guy too, not just a technologist, but I'm not saying I want to sell each one of you a HoloLens. No. I want to make sure you have access to it. And I think what you're going to find from Microsoft as we continue to develop is this pricing platform goes down. And when we talk about what it takes to build one of these machines, you'll understand why the pricing is the way the pricing is, right? Just for your information, I put the slides up here so we can follow along. I absolutely do not use slides. Not really a big thing. I put them up just for people to look at if they're not into what I'm saying. But for the most part, we're just going to talk versus reading off charts, okay? So as it says here, I'm the director of Windows Device Strategy. I work for Microsoft for all of Canada for everything education. So I cover coast to coast education, higher ed, K-12 vocational schools, private schools, anything with a teacher or a student, that's me. And I'm alone. Admittedly, I like it that way. I'm a don't play in my sandbox kind of guy when it comes to that stuff, right? Because I'm really passionate about it. I'm a little OCD about certain things, and I like things done a certain way, but this is a perfect job for me. I was talking with a few of you earlier on, and you said, what do you think of my job? I said, yeah, I have the best job at Microsoft. Because all I have to do if I'm not working from home is travel the world for training, travel Canada for all my customers, and bring a bunch of tools and toys and technology and show people technology. That's what I do every day. Every time new tech comes out, I get one. HP makes something new, they send me one. Lenovo makes one, they send me one. And I play with it, I digest it, I understand it, then I go and I help people understand it. So really great job to have at Microsoft, centered around devices. Obviously that touched on stuff like Windows, which is we're going to talk a little bit about because we're going to talk about HoloLens. Touched on things like Office and that whole other suite of stuff. There's laptops, desktops, there are thousands of different products from all of our OEM manufacturers and ourselves. But the key gem, if I had to pick one, is the HoloLens. Okay? So, there's the portfolio. HoloLens came on board about a year ago. Does anybody know how much it cost Microsoft to develop this? Yell at a number. 10 million? 2 billion. $2 billion in 7 years, right? So when we talk about technology, one of the things to understand is we didn't do it to make money. If companies don't innovate and if companies don't invest in technology, despite the fact of not using it to make money, we're never going to get anywhere. And that's really important. So as a person, as a young person, as an older person, as us in the workplace, I want to believe that I'm committed and that I'm driving forward to getting something for everybody. For lack of a cheesy term, the greater good. Right? So $2 billion, 7 years of development. Kind of cool. It was developed actually in an underground parking lot at one of the buildings in Redmond, so nobody knew it was there. So you had to go to a certain elevator and push like P2 and go down. When you came out, 2 sets of doors open and you were in a lab. Real James Bond, secret-y kind of lab stuff. Right? But they spent 7 years building this thing. Now, when we talk about the technology, this is mixed reality. So everybody here, I'm sure, is well aware of AR, augmented, right? Like things like a Google Glass. VR, Oculus, right? This is a blending of the two. Call it the jack of all trades. I want to say from an AR perspective, it's probably one of the best platforms out there. From a VR, if you're purely into VR and VR is what you want to do, probably not the device for you. Because limited range of vision. Now the good news about a device like this, when we talk about it, is that we can do both. If I really want to do a VR session, I can. I can put this on and I can populate, and I was telling a story to someone when I first got this the first day. There's an application out there called Fragments, and it was right in my wheelhouse because it had to do with solving a crime. Right away I was hooked. I mean, I gotta try this thing, right? But it recreates a virtual reality environment, and you're a detective trying to solve a crime. But I went back to my hotel room, all charged up. The first day I got this in my hands, opened up so excited, like Christmas early. And I put it on, and by the time the battery wore out, 5.5 hours later, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. People had tried to call me, they tried to text me, the hotel had knocked on my door to do a turn down service. I heard nothing. I was gone. I was in another world. Up until it flashed and said, hey buddy, your battery's about to die, you might want to plug this in, right? That's how cool the innovative technology is. So when I say that I see in a not too distant future the ability for us to go to school with a device like this, absolutely possible. Absolutely. And I'll talk to a little bit of examples a little bit later on what we're doing actually in the field from a device perspective and from a utilization perspective. But so understand the first thing is mixed reality. Now, there was a big change at Microsoft the last week or two to one of our mission statements. Did anybody catch that change? We used to be a mobile-first device company. Did anybody hear about the change? You're going to talk a lot about that technology today because they've said intelligent edge infused with AI. That's the future. Don't think of this as a computer. Think of it, if you're like me, I think of this as a serving tray. All the good stuff goes on top. I'm no programmer, I'm no scientist, I'm no engineer. I'm a device guy. But this is just a means of consumption, right? But think of what you can do with it, right? When you've got this headset on, you can access any Windows app, any modern app from the store. You can do Office when I travel. I do my email, my PowerPoint. I do all my work on this device. My hotel room, my airport seat, my seat on the plane becomes my office. I can resize my windows, put my windows down, do them. I can listen to music. I can watch Netflix while I'm doing some work, everything on this headset. So it's great for consumption. The driver is big data. So all these fantastic speakers that you're going to hear from today, all the cool stuff they're doing with quantum computing, with physics, with data, that's the end goal, data consumption, IoT, AI, that's what this device is designed for. Now, this is currently Gen 1, so we talked a little bit how long it took to develop. When we look at the actual internals on it, there's a ton of sensors in here. Sensors, accelerometers, cameras, so that you get a complete view and a complete surrounded environment. That's why when I put the headset on, I got lost. And that's my expectation, is that someone tries it. When I have a customer or a client or a student try this for the first time, I want to see a big smile. Sometimes I hear, oh shit, it's awesome, right? And sometimes I hear, whoa, that's what I want to hear, right? That's the experience I want to see and I want to hear because I want it to give you that wow, right? So the sensors help you do that. Now, normally, if I was doing a few hours of presentation, I would remotely hook this up and I would actually show you what I could do. The really cool thing about this is because of the way we designed it on Windows 10, it uses Cortana. Anybody here know who Cortana is? Good. Side note, it's kind of funny. Sometimes when I go to the Maritimes, I go, hey, who here used an Internet Explorer? And there's like nobody. It's like crickets, right? So it's good to actually hear someone who actually knows who Cortana is. So Cortana's built in. So I can do stuff like say, hey, Cortana, remind me in an hour to stop playing this darn game and go have dinner. I should have done it. Coulda, shoulda, woulda, didn't. Right? But Cortana has voice activation. So the really great thing is when we start and you open up a HoloLens for the first time in the box, there's a little clicker. Right? Throw that away. Like, don't use it. That's like 101 level basic. You don't want to be the guy clicking like this. You don't want to be that person. Toss it away. Gestures. So the great thing about the cameras is they're looking forward and they're looking for gestures. So they're really easy. There's only two you need to know, how to click and how to open and close a program in a menu. That's it. And when you get really good at doing this or your arm gets tired, you can just switch to voice. Right? You can start telling the HoloLens what to do and it'll start doing it. Now, when we're coding applications, we're embedding those commands into the code. So if we're coding and we want to make sure that we're coding for a mixed reality device, we want to make sure we include a lot of those commentaries like open this, close this, right? To make sure that the software actually knows how to interact with the hardware. Okay? So a lot of sensors in there. Now, inside the top of this chassis is the PC board. So if you look at this, this is a full PC. Think of it like a laptop on your head from a hardware perspective. It's a quad-core Atom class device. There are three really important chips in here. So we got a CPU, we got a GPU for graphics, and what's the third one? It's our own custom fab. Does anybody know what the third chip, special chip would be in here? HPU, holographic processing unit. So it's our own chip. And that handles terabytes of data. So the really cool thing is when I put this headset on, and I actually look around the room and I click, it will actually map my environment. So when I got to that hotel room and I started that program called Fragments, I mapped my room. Now this is where things get really cool. Because it can process that data and it can hard place mapping, it'll remember where things are. Now, don't get me wrong, the HoloLens doesn't know my bed's a bed. But what it knows is it's a flat surface. So how cool is it when I'm playing Fragments that a detective comes in to talk to me and they walk in and they sit down on the bed? Right? How real does that environment come? Like you get goosebumps. Like I'm thinking about it, I get some goosebumps because it's that invasive into your psyche, right? They will interact with you. When holograms talk to you, they look at you. If you walk away, they follow you with their eyes. They talk to you. They know where you are. So the ability to build that mixed, I'll call it a mixed environment, where you get the best of kind of a VR and an AR, totally possible with the hardware on this platform. So not just a regular laptop from a performance perspective, but definitely from a hardware perspective, there's a very small silicon blade up here. 64 gigs of storage, 4 gigs of memory. Now the most expensive component on this whole device are these blades. So when we look at this device and we say that it's a $4,200 unit, 3/4 of that cost is those two blades right there. And what these blades do is they actually funnel light down from the system, down through the blades. They're colored blades, so if you get a chance later and look, there's 3 or 4 different colored blades, and project them into your eye. So the really cool thing is if someone's standing beside me, they don't get that experience. It's totally from me. But the beauty of it is because it's being fed right into my eyes and it's see-through, I can see through it. So from an education perspective, the perfect mixed reality device. Because if I put on an Oculus or I put another VR device, I'm in my own bubble. Yes, the experience is fantastic from a VR perspective, but I don't know what the rest of you are doing and I can walk right off the stage, right? And it's certainly the cord that's hooked onto the PC is not going to save me from falling off. Totally self-contained, totally detached, no requirement to be attached to a PC, and autonomous, and your own experience from a VR and HR perspective, right? Those blades, by the way, at current manufacturing, have an 80% yield. So every 20 blades out of 100 we make don't work at that size. So the experience you're going to get, and we were talking to people a little bit earlier about what the experience is like with a HoloLens, your brain is really quick to adapt. So when you're doing AR, you don't even notice the field of view. Because you're looking around and it's popping things out or it's dropping holograms. It's really easy to interact with. When you're talking about VR, you notice it because it's a letterbox. You're looking through like this, right? It's kind of like looking through binoculars. You don't get this. That's pure VR, right? You don't get that. You get a good view of it, but you don't get it. Now, the good thing is your brain, if you're really interested in the subject, helps you along with that, and you start to not notice it. Like if I were to put you in Dinosaur Land VR, you'd be looking around seeing dinosaurs and prehistoric creatures, you'd be fine, you wouldn't even notice after 5 minutes, right? But the point is, that field of view is a $4,000 field of view. So word on the street from Microsoft and these teams, especially HoloLens and Minecraft are the two most hush-hush groups at Microsoft. We're going to skip Gen 2 completely and go right to Gen 3. So I have big anticipation for what the Gen 3 product of this is going to be. I think, would be a much bigger field of view, and much more autonomy and much more horsepower. You can already render in 3D now. If you load up, if you're doing a course on human anatomy, you can load up a life-size skeleton and peel away the vascular system, peel away the organs, peel away the muscles, real time. And if you want to come up later, I'll load up and I'll find a corner back there and I'll actually load up the anatomy so you can actually take a look. You can actually step in to the skeletal and step through the rib cage and go see where the heart is, go see the vascular system and step back out of it, right? Now the great thing about the design is that not only is that for you, but that's for other people. So the fact that I can connect through a browser, really easy, right? I can take a Chrome browser, I can actually go to my IP address, and I can just view it real time. So not only in a classroom are you directly controlling and seeing what you're doing, but everybody else in the room can follow along with you, right? So this is the kind of stuff you're going to actually see when you're using the device. The way we capture this is from a third source camera. So we have a camera with a special software that will capture the environment and capture the holograms. So it's important to remember, and I mean, I'm a straight shooter guy, so this is what I always come through with clear and concise messaging. What you see on a stage projected like this isn't what you're going to see through a HoloLens. It's a representation based on a camera design, something like you'd see a camera like one of these, specially equipped to view holographic images overlaid, right? This is not the typical experience. But if you were wearing these right now and you looked at that design, that's exactly what you would see through your eyes. You could grow it, you could shrink it. A lot of people like taking selfies. I put a little ballet dancer or weightlifter in their hand and then take a picture of it and that kind of stuff. You can do that stuff. But that's a no-brainer, that's easy. When you start to code in the 3D environments and the human anatomy and all that stuff, that's where things get complicated. So when we talk about these devices for education, that's the real cool factor, and that's why I say it's the serving tray. I don't want you to worry about the serving tray. If it were up to me, I'd want to make them almost free. Because what I want you to do is I want you to code. Does anybody know how you code, what language you use to code for a HoloLens? Yeah. So C#, you can use C++. I'm back from the GW and the regular basic days, by the way. Line 10, go to line 20 then? Yeah, awesome. Unity, really great gaming engine. That's what you code in, really easy. So when I got my device, I actually went down to Redmond and I spent a week with the team. Within a week, I was coding it full VR environments for this, easy. And I'd never coded in Unity before. Very easy to code for, but that's what I'm interested in and that's what Microsoft's interested in. We didn't make the hardware to sell the hardware, no. We made the hardware to drive AI, to drive mixed reality, to drive augmented reality, right? That's the future of this device. That's what it looks like when you're using it, and that's how you set up like your home office. So I'll set up a window with my Outlook. It'll use Bluetooth because it's Windows, right? So I can use a Bluetooth keyboard, Bluetooth mouse to interact with this if I don't want to be pecking at a virtual keyboard all day. Like if I'm selling lols and whats, that's okay, but if I'm actually typing an email, I probably want to use a regular keyboard, right? Blow my brains out. But this is what the environment you can get, and it'll do any Windows modern app, because it is a Windows 10 based OS. Now, in the field, what we're doing with this, and this is some really cool stuff. If you guys want to see innovation, who here is from BC? Anybody here from BC? Okay. BC, there's a company called Finger Foods. If I were you, after this whole thing's over, I would go on YouTube and I would look for Finger Foods. Those guys are cutting edge for this. They saw the potential in a device like this for their own applications. They used to make games. They make video games, like they do those, the little guys you put on a Portal, like Portal Masters and all that stuff for Xbox and PC, right? They make those games. They said, you know what, I see a niche for this. I think we're going to go program for this. What these guys did, and I got a chance to tour with them, they bought a warehouse and they call it the Holodeck. And they make full-size 18-wheeler trucks, full-size. And they actually will design them for, this is for Kenworth, for doing aerodynamics, for coefficients of drag, for fuel consumption. So think of this now. They buy a warehouse. They build a 3D model of a full-size, life-size 18-wheeler truck. They build a virtual wind tunnel, blow air by it. You put on a HoloLens, you can step into the truck and stand right behind the front grille and watch the wind come around the truck. And where it changes color to yellow and red is where they're getting drag. They can go in and adjust the size of a mirror, adjust the size of the angle of a hood, real time. People used to have to, for these companies, mold these things out of clay. Car designers that make cars build them out of clay. Thousands of hours of molding in clay. That's like, oh, Bob, we got to change that hood. Ugh. 5 more days of like shaving down the hood and adding clay. And now, real time, boom, make the change, Bob. Done. Right? So the first thing they did was with Kenworth. The other thing they did, and I didn't put a slide up of it yet because they're still working on it, is oil and gas. The ability to send a drone down a pipeline, follow along with this, and look for cracks, look for pressure, look for any indications of any kind of leaks. Not having to send a human person in there. ThyssenKrupp. Does anybody know the company ThyssenKrupp? They make elevators. You should know them. You take an elevator probably every second or third day. They're one of the biggest elevator companies in the world. All their technicians, Hololenses. When they're in the field, they can actually look at a circuit board, and it'll pop up saying, check here, check here, check here. If they're not sure, they can call level 2 support. This supports Skype. They can actually go in and someone can draw on the screen, hey, check this switch here, check this fuse. You can actually guide someone through it. So if you think, again, from an age perspective and a generational perspective, if you think back to when I was young, when I was your age, and the toilet got clogged. No clue. Dad, toilet's clogged. What do I do? Today, you can actually go on YouTube and go, here's what you do, here's the 5 steps, follow along. Think of this taking it to the next step further where I can go, yeah, I don't know what's going on. Okay, check this switch here, check this lever, do this, real time. So real-time communication from a Skype perspective, not only via voice, but the ability to interact graphically. Right. Lowe's. You're not there yet, but eventually you'll have your own place. And you'll want to put your own flavor and your own spin on it. And I'm just going through this now. I just moved back to Montreal 2 months ago. I still don't have a kitchen. My wife's a very patient woman because she doesn't even have a sink and she doesn't have a kitchen now. It's been a month and a half. Not the happiest wife on the planet. But kitchens, the ability to go into a Lowe's store, pick all of your flavors of countertop, paint, countertop like cupboard doors, hinges, hardware, pick them all out, see what they're going to look like in your environment, hit a button, print out a SKU list of what you need to buy to make it happen. Volvo, being able to go into a Volvo dealership. Now, yeah, you can do the easy stuff like picking the mags and the color of your car for sure. But what Volvo does is they'll bring a client in and show them how the hybrid system works. They'll have a full-size Volvo right there on the showroom floor virtually, and they'll pop the top right off, show them where the batteries are, show them where the safety features are. Customers see that, they feel confident. They're like, wow, this is technology. Wow, I've never been able to see this before because it's buried away inside of this. It's encased in this steel beam that I can't get to. Much like human anatomy, the ability to take an engine and strip it apart, to find out where the failure is. All of this serving trade driven by big data. Data is the future. AI, quantum computing, you're going to hear about later, fantastic topics. Data is the future. This is just helping you consume it. Okay? Q&A. I got time for a few. Yep.
In terms of an automation perspective, how would this be used? How much of the setup, for example, is automated? How would that help in, say, building a factory that produces cars?
So we did an interesting thing. We had a company that made an app for construction. So this is kind of along the lines of your question from an automation perspective. We took a construction worker, we took away his tape, his level, his measuring tools, we gave him a hammer, some nails, some wood, and we said, build us a bathroom, 6x6 bathroom, only with HoloLens. So what he did is when he put this on, it would show him exactly where the boards had to go, where he had to put the nails, and when they were level. So from a manufacturing perspective, the ability to quickly replicate instructions from a graphical perspective and correct them, things like measurements, things like distance, things like alignment, it can do. From an automation perspective, the sky is the limit. What are you going to program for it? Right? The sky's the limit. It's all code. As the code gets better, as our knowledge and understanding of coding and AI and data gets better, these get better. And they become obsolete. And we replace them with better versions of what they were that are faster, stronger, more powerful, more responsive, and more capable. Right?
Awesome. So we'll do one more audience question. Perfect, right here. And feel free to say your name.
My name's Marina. And what was the original problem that inspired you to do that project?
So for which project?
for creating the HoloLens?
So I don't think it was a problem so much as an idea around conceptually consuming data. When you look today, things like IoT, there's so much data. I mean, your fridge is giving you data, your car is giving you data. The ease with which you can interact and consume that data. So if you think for me, for K to 12, iPads, as much as I'm a Microsoft guy, iPads are perfect for consuming that data. When you start to get into high levels of data, being able to consume them with your hands free is really critical. Because otherwise, I see something, okay, yeah, I gotta put it down, I gotta get my hammer. The ability to actually wear it and actually do the work or do the deconstruction or do the composition while visualizing it was the idea behind the construction.
Awesome. So I have one question for Steven. A lot of these young folks in the audience might be really inspired now to get into AR, right? But they might not know the first step to take to actually start coding for it and developing solutions. So what would you say, step by step, would be the first couple things to do to really start getting into this space, like today or tomorrow?
Sure. So, one, passion. If you don't have a passion, don't waste your time. Because if you're not happy doing what you're doing or you're not doing something you really love, you're never going to excel at it. My personal opinion. That's the first thing. Two, start coding. You don't need someone to teach you how to code. When I was 14, life and technology was very different. McDonald's was easy. $4.75 an hour, I made some burgers, I did there for 8 hours, and I went home, washed my uniform, rinse and repeat. Today, you're empowered. There's so much information you have online and available to you, things like Khan Academy, things like these groups, where you can actually teach yourself. Don't wait for someone to spoon feed you a solution. You know why? Every time they spoon feed you something, it's something that's already known. I can tell you the same thing to every person here 20 times. It's the same thing. Go out and learn it for yourself. You might learn a new flavor that I don't know. So I think of all things, definitely starting with a passion, being a self-starter in the sense of if you want to code, if you want to do AR, you want to do robotics, you want to get into computers, you want to work at Microsoft, you want to work at Google, do it. Empower yourself. Don't wait for someone to carry you there.
So to reiterate, it's C++ and C#.
C++ primarily and Unity.
Okay.
Unity 3D is the big, you really want to do 3D because 2D is really like a flat window screen. You really want to be coding in 3D. So Unity, definitely download it with the SDK right from the Microsoft side. It doesn't cost you anything, and start developing.
So download Unity, start coding in C++. If you're interested in AR, these are the first steps that you can take to really get interested in, or into the space.
And if you have any questions along the way or any problems, add me on LinkedIn and reach out to me, because part of why I do what I do for education is to help all the guys and girls like you empower yourselves to do more with what you want to do. Okay?
Awesome. Thanks, Steven.
All right, thanks.
This is great. And he's going to be here for a little while as well, so you can ask him questions during lunch or during the brain pods. What's interesting is Steven and most people, successful people over the age of 25 will tell you that finding your passion is super important. And that's one of our main mantras at TKS. But a lot of people think finding your passion is like finding love at first sight. Like it rarely happens. It almost just doesn't happen. And so you actually have to develop your passions. You have to put in the work. You got to get to know the person, right? You got to face challenges, overcome obstacles. That's how you get really excited about a problem or idea, or even, your best friend. You're not best friends with them on day one. You have cool experiences. And so when you're thinking about AR, if this is something you're passionate about, if you're passionate about blockchain, or if you're passionate about AI, or you're interested, in these things, just start doing stuff in these fields, and that passion will come. So what's interesting is when we talked about AR, right? A lot of you might be thinking, this is interesting, I want to start getting into the field. So we talked about 2 steps. Sabarish, where's Sabarish? Where's he at? So Sabarish is back there, okay? He was a part of the TKS program. He was really interested in AR and specifically the HoloLens. He learned everything about the HoloLens, reached out to Microsoft. Now he's sponsored by Microsoft, start developing AR applications, has access to the HoloLens whenever he wants. They gave him a laptop that has the processing capabilities to actually code for it. And now he's 14 or just turned 15, or 14 right now, he was 13, just turned 14, and he's building AR applications for the HoloLens. But it's the process, right? And so I would encourage you guys to really start doing that. What's also interesting is Stephen talked about some of these fields, how you can use AR. And so I want you to start thinking about other fields and how you can combine that with AR, right? Think about medicine applications. The most common one you guys might be thinking is non-invasive training for surgeons, for example. Imagine you can do that with AR. Or even during surgery, how can you highlight certain arteries and say, cut here, and provide very granular instructions to do that? Think about AR and AI, how those two fields can be combined. AR and transportation. So really start making these connections in your head. And the last thing I want to say before I introduce Anthony, our next speaker, is a lot of these topics might feel challenging, right, when they're talking about the technical details. And we told the speakers to talk about some of the technical details and the guts of their actual technologies, because that's what you guys said you were interested in. And so if you feel like it's overwhelming, like if you feel yourself being disengaged because you can't really follow it, I would encourage you to just will yourself past it. Bring yourself back, try and understand. Make notes on your phone so you can go home and Google it, or just Google it on the spot, right? So force yourself to really try and understand, and maybe you'll retain 5 or 10%, but that's okay, because there's going to be a lot of information thrown at you today. Awesome.